why are so many Palestinian olive trees being destroyed?
This video shows Israeli settlers attacking Palestinian olive pickers and destroying their property.
Since 1967, Israeli authorities and settlers have destroyed over 800,000 Palestinian olive trees in the occupied West Bank. The sheer number of trees they've destroyed over the decades is staggering. But these very olive trees have also come to symbolize Palestinian survival and resistance. Okay, so first, some background. Olive trees are hugely important to Palestinians. They've been cultivated in Palestine for thousands of years, and they're a critical source of income. The livelihoods of as many as 100,000 Palestinian families depend on them and their related exports, like olive oil and soap. And then there's heritage. From the mouth-watering delicacies of Palestinian cuisine, to centuries of rich literature and poetry, to the gorgeous motifs present in Palestinian embroidery and art, olives are an inseparable part of Palestinian identity. One of the oldest olive trees, known by the name al-Badawi, is believed to be at least 4,000 years old. Now, some of these olive trees are destroyed by Israeli authorities to make way for their own infrastructure and their own towns, which are, by the way, inaccessible to Palestinians, or sometimes in the name of security. But a lot of this tree killing is carried out by Israeli settlers. These are folks who have been building illegal settlements on Palestinian land since Israel occupied the West Bank in 1967. And they frequently attack Palestinians and their property, while often benefiting from the full protection of the Israeli authorities. These attacks often happen during the peak olive harvesting months of October and November. Settlers either burn the trees, cut them down, block their water sources, vandalize them, poison them, or even bulldoze them, destroying Palestinian families' livelihoods. This is no joke. Though well suited to the dry climate of the region, olive trees often take several years before they start bearing fruit. The economic impact of their destruction is devastating.
This is the aftermath of what seems a pretty systematic attempt to destroy the livelihood of this olive grower.
All the trees in this orchard would have netted the farmer thousands of dollars this harvest season alone.
And then there's a whole other dimension to all this that we haven't even talked about. And that's how the sheer act of harvesting olives can be highly dangerous for Palestinians. That's because Israeli settlers, sometimes armed with guns, have regularly carried out acts of violence against Palestinian farmers themselves.
The Israeli settlers and military are over there, around our olive trees, so we're scared to go in.
Just recently, in October 2023, 40-year-old Palestinian olive farmer Bilal Saleh was shot dead by an Israeli settler while harvesting his own olives. And his story is not an isolated incident. The constant cycle of threats means that acres upon acres of olive orchards sometimes go completely unharvested. Palestinian olive farmers are forced to pick between providing for their families and staying alive. It's so bad that sometimes international volunteers literally accompany Palestinians while they pick their own olives just to keep them safe. And here's the thing. The Israeli authorities have a huge role to play in all this. For one, they rarely hold the settlers accountable for their actions, and the Israeli military rarely confronts the settlers while they're going about committing crimes. If anything, they protect them, and sometimes even assist them, financially or otherwise. Most recently, a right-wing Israeli minister gave them guns. Yes, this actually happened. Then there's the legal restrictions. Palestinians sometimes need to obtain permits from the Israeli government to pick their own olives from their own trees. And this isn't even mentioning Israel's infamous border wall, which has separated Palestinian farmers from lands and olive orchards that have been in their families for generations. So it's no surprise that the destruction of olive trees is tied to Israel's expanding occupation of Palestinian land and the erasure of Palestinians and their heritage from that land. By clearing the land of the trees, or by turning a blind eye to settler violence, they paved the way for the construction of more illegal settlements. In fact, in 2023, before Hamas's October 7th attack, Israel had already set an all-time record for the number of settlements built in the occupied West Bank. But despite the threats from settlers, despite the Israeli authorities, despite the fear for their safety, Palestinians have continued to harvest their olives every year. And also every year, Palestinians and their allies plant thousands of new olive trees.
لكن كلعوا الزيتون ورجعن مثل ما هن وخدمناهن ورجعن مثل ما كانوا وزيادة أخرى. خشروا المستوطنين ولا يأخذوها. إن الأرض إن مش لهم من هان تاتكم الساعة إحنا وياهم.